Every winter, the same problem returns. Your heating bill doubles. The furnace runs constantly, yet half your house stays cold while the other half overheats. You wake up with dry throat from forced air. Your energy meter spins like a slot machine. Despite burning through money and resources, you never feel truly warm, just uncomfortably hot or frustratingly cold. 2,000 years ago, civilization solved this exact problem. No fuel bills whatsoever. Siberian families stayed comfortable through -40-degree winters, firing their heater just twice daily. Korean homes radiated warmth for 24 hours from a single cooking fire. Swedish stoves heated rooms for an entire day using wood from one tree per year. They achieved what we cannot: bone-deep comfort, energy independence, heating systems that work better the longer they lasted. What happens when you heat like ancient cultures did? You discover the future of heating was perfected centuries ago. Thermal battery engineering. In the frozen heart of Siberia, winter temperatures plunged to -40 degrees Celsius. Russian families survived here for centuries with a heating system so efficient it defies modern logic. It was called the pechka, the Russian stove. It could keep an entire home warm for 24 hours using just 2 hours of firewood. The pechka was not a stove in any modern sense. It was a massive brick structure weighing 1 to 2 tons. It dominated the center of the home, consuming nearly 1/4 of the living space. But this immense size was precisely the point. The Russians had discovered something fundamental that we have largely forgotten. The secret to lasting warmth is not constant burning, but perfect heat storage. The design was deceptively brilliant. Inside this brick giant lay a complex labyrinth of channels and passages, called kolenya, meaning knees or bends. When wood burned in the firebox, hot smoke and gases did not rush straight up a chimney. Instead, they travelled through 6 to 8 meters of winding pathways. They were forced to snake back and forth through the brick maze before finally escaping. This journey was everything. As superheated gases crawled through the passages, the dense brick absorbed thermal energy like a battery charging. Fire brick can hold 80% more heat than iron, yet it conducts heat 45 times slower. This meant the pechka transformed from cold mass to radiant heater gradually. But once charged, it released warmth for an extraordinary duration. Families would light the fire twice daily, once in early morning, once in evening. Each burn lasted just 2 to 3 hours. Then the damper closed, sealing the heat inside the brick cathedral. For the next 10 to 12 hours, the pechka radiated gentle, pervasive warmth into every corner of the home. The surface temperature stabilized between 45 and 55 degrees Celsius, warm enough to heat the room, but safe enough to touch. But the genius went further. The flat top of the pechka served as a sleeping platform. In the brutal Siberian winter, the elderly and children would sleep directly on this warm surface. They were cocooned in dry, radiant heat. It was not merely comfort, it was survival engineering. The steady warmth helped those with respiratory ailments and joint pain, turning the stove into both heater and medicine. Modern studies of Russian stoves show thermal efficiency between 80 and 90%. Compare this to a standard forced air furnace at 60 to 70% efficiency. The gap becomes stark. The pechka wasted almost nothing. Every calorie extracted from firewood became useful heat, stored and released exactly when needed. The Russians had built a heating system that required firing only twice daily to maintain comfort through Arctic winters. No electricity, no thermostats, no constant tending. Just 2 tons of brick, brilliant design, and an understanding of thermal physics that puts our energy-hungry systems to shame. The Swedish perfection. While the Russians invented thermal mass heating through trial and survival, the Swedes took the concept and refined it into a science. In 1767, Sweden faced a national crisis. Constant wood burning was causing deforestation. King Adolf Fredrik commissioned architect Carl Johan Cronstedt to solve an impossible problem: create a stove that uses far less wood while heating homes just as effectively. Cronstedt's solution was the kakalugan, or tiled stove. It was not merely functional, it was a masterpiece of calculated engineering that transformed home heating across northern Europe. The kakalugan operated on principles eerily similar to the Russian pechka, but with Swedish precision. Inside a shell of beautiful ceramic tiles lay a carefully designed system of 5 internal flues. Each flue path was mathematically calculated for optimal length and cross-sectional area. The smoke travelled approximately 10 metres through these channels before reaching the chimney. It extracted maximum thermal energy at every turn. But the Swedish innovation went beyond mere channel length. Kronstedt separated the inner core from the outer tile jacket with an expansion gap. This seemingly small detail solved a critical problem. As the inner core heated and expanded, it did not crack the decorative outer tiles. The gap also moderated heat release, creating gentler, more sustained radiation. The ceramic tiles themselves were not mere decoration. They served as thermal regulators. They absorbed heat during the 2 to 3 hour burn. Then they released it slowly over the next 20 to 24 hours. A properly fired katalog maintained surface temperatures between 40 and 50 degrees Celsius, warm to touch, but never burning. This was radiant heating perfected, the sensation of sunlight on skin rather than hot air blowing past. The efficiency numbers were staggering. A kakalugan achieved 90 to 98% thermal efficiency. This meant almost every joule of energy in the wood converted to useful heat. The combustion temperature inside reached 850 to 1050 degrees Celsius, far hotter than standard iron stoves at 450 to 600 degrees. This intense heat ensured complete combustion, burning off pollutants that normally escape as smoke. The environmental impact was profound. A regularly used kakalugan burned the wood of just one medium-sized tree per year. That tree absorbed the same amount of carbon dioxide in its lifetime that the stove emitted. This made the system carbon neutral, centuries before the term existed. Swedish families adopted a rhythm around their katalog: fire in the morning, fire in the evening, warmth all day and night, no constant feeding, no temperature fluctuations, no wasted heat. The tile stove became the heart of the Swedish home, both practical machine and beautiful sculpture. The Swedes had proven that Russian thermal mass could be refined through precise calculation into an even more efficient system. They took survival engineering and elevated it to art. The Korean endurance, 2,000 years of proof. On the Korean peninsula, a heating system called ondol has been warming homes continuously for over 2,000 years, not as historical curiosity, as living, functional technology still used in modern Korean apartments today. This is not ancient history. This is validation. The word ondol means warm stone. That captures its essence perfectly. Unlike the Russian and Swedish systems that dedicated space to a massive stove, the ondol integrated heating directly into the architecture. The entire floor became the radiator. The system was ingeniously simple. The kitchen fireplace was built slightly lower than the main living area. It served dual purpose, cooking and heating. When a family lit a fire to prepare dinner, hot smoke did not vent directly outside. Instead, a network of horizontal stone flues ran beneath the floor of the adjacent room. They channeled the exhaust under thick flat stones called gudulyang, pronounced Go-dulyang. These stones were the thermal battery. Made from granite or slate, they were 30 to 40 centimeters thick. They absorbed heat slowly as hot gases passed beneath. The gudulyang then radiated warmth upward through a layer of clay and oiled paper. This created an evenly heated floor surface that maintained 27 to 32 degrees Celsius. The Korean innovation was total heat recycling. Every calorie spent cooking became home heating. There was no separate furnace, no wasted energy, no redundant systems. One fire, two purposes, maximum efficiency. Modern analysis shows ondol systems can stay warm for 8 to 10 hours after the fire dies. Surface temperatures remain above 50 degrees Celsius for over 2 hours. This technology fundamentally shaped Korean culture. Because the floor was the warmest part of the home, daily life happened on the floor. Families ate on the floor. They worked on the floor. They slept on the floor. The traditional Korean lifestyle is inseparable from ondol heating. Historical records show the system's importance. King Sejong of the Joseon dynasty was one of Korea's most revered rulers. He prescribed ondol rest to a sick courtier as medical treatment. The steady floor warmth was considered therapeutic. It promoted blood circulation and eased respiratory ailments. The democratic nature of ondol stands in stark contrast to Roman hypercosts, which only the wealthy could afford. Every Korean home used ondol. from peasant cottage to royal palace. It required no slaves. It demanded no specialized labor. It could be built with local materials by any skilled mason. When Korea modernized in the 20th century, ondol did not disappear. It evolved. Today, over 90% of Korean homes use a modern version that pumps hot water through pipes instead of smoke through flues. The principle remains identical: heat from below, radiant comfort, efficient energy use. The Koreans proved that thermal mass floor heating was not Roman genius, but universal solution. They refined it for 2 millennia and validated its worth by never abandoning it. When a technology survives continuous use for 2,000 years, perhaps we should pay attention. 3 civilizations, 3 completely different approaches to the same problem. But we are just getting started. If these ancient heating systems are blowing your mind, make sure you are subscribed. What comes next will change how you think about heating forever. The Chinese innovation, multifunctional survival. In northern China's frigid plains, families developed a heating system so clever it served as bed, heater, dining table, and social center, all in one integrated platform. The Kang bed stove turned furniture into thermal engineering. The Kang was a raised hollow platform, typically 2 to 3 meters long. It was constructed from brick or adobe clay. It occupied a significant portion of the main room, often built against one wall with the sleeping surface facing the interior. This placement was strategic. One structure provided heat, sleeping space, and room division simultaneously. Like the Korean ondol, the Kang recycled cooking heat with ruthless efficiency. A kitchen stove connected to the Kang's hollow interior through winding internal flues. When the family cooked dinner, hot smoke flowed through these channels inside the platform before venting through a chimney. The dense brick or clay absorbed this heat gradually over a 2-hour preheat cycle. Then it radiated warmth for 10 to 12 hours afterward. The thermal mass was substantial. Adobe and brick layers 40 to 60 centimeters thick acted as a heat sink. They drank in thermal energy and released it slowly through the night. This meant the evening cooking fire simultaneously prepared food and preheated the family bed. It extracted double value from every piece of firewood. Modern scientific studies validate the efficiency. A well-designed Kang reduces firewood consumption by 35 to 40% compared to separate cooking and heating systems. In regions where fuel was precious and winters brutal, this efficiency was not luxury. It was survival. The social impact was profound. During the day, the Kang served as a warm work surface and dining platform. Family members gathered on it to eat, craft, and socialize. Their lower bodies were warmed by the gentle heat below. At night, the entire family slept on the platform, sharing its communal warmth. The Kang became the literal and symbolic center of domestic life. In traditional Chinese villages, the status and size of a family's Kang indicated their prosperity. Larger families built longer Kangs. Some extended 4 meters to accommodate multiple generations sleeping side by side. The platform's warmth forged family bonds as children, parents, and grandparents shared the heated space through long winter nights. The Chinese took a fundamental human need, warmth, and solved it with a single multifunctional piece of furniture. No separate beds, no standalone heaters, no wasted space, just intelligent design extracting maximum value from minimal resources. The Icelandic validation: free energy for 700 years. Free energy for 700 years. In Iceland, Vikings discovered the ultimate heating hack: let the earth do the work. For over 700 years, Icelandic settlements have tapped geothermal energy. This proves that the most efficient heat source is the one you do not have to create. The concept was elegantly simple. Iceland sits on a volcanic hotspot where naturally heated water bubbles up from deep underground. Medieval Icelandic settlers faced brutal North Atlantic winters. They realized they could capture this free thermal energy. By the 13th century, towns like Reykjavik had developed sophisticated distribution systems. Wooden pipes and stone channels captured hot springs. They routed water that emerged from the earth at 80 to 100 degrees Celsius throughout the settlement. Houses, workshops, and even churches received heated water through this geothermal network. The genius was not in complex engineering, but in recognizing and harnessing a natural resource. While the rest of Europe burned forests to stay warm, Icelanders paid zero fuel costs. The Earth's internal heat, generated by radioactive decay and residual formation energy, provided endless warmth. It was the ultimate renewable resource, available 24 hours daily, immune to supply disruptions, completely sustainable. The system required maintenance, certainly. Pipes needed repair. Channels required cleaning. Distribution points demanded oversight. But compared to the labor of harvesting, transporting and burning wood, geothermal heating was almost effortless. What makes Iceland's story remarkable is continuity. This was not experimental technology that failed and was abandoned. It was infrastructure that has been continuously improved for 7 centuries. When modern pumps and better pipes became available, Iceland upgraded its geothermal systems rather than replacing them. Today, 90% of Icelandic homes are heated by geothermal energy. The medieval wooden pipes have become modern steel and plastic, but the principle remains unchanged. The same hot springs that warmed Viking settlements still heat Reykjavik today. This is not nostalgia. This is validation that Iceland got it right in the Middle Ages. The environmental impact cannot be overstated. Iceland has one of the lowest carbon footprints per capita in the developed world, despite its cold climate. This is largely because heating requires no fossil fuel combustion. They achieved sustainability not through modern green technology, but by recognizing and using what the Earth freely provided. The Icelandic example proves a crucial point. The best heating system is not always the most complex or newest. Sometimes it is simply the one that works with nature rather than against it. When 4 cultures discover the same truth. Now something remarkable happens in this story, something that validates everything we have discussed. In 14th century Japan, families developed a heated table called a kotatsu, pronounced kotatsu. In 18th century Iran, households gathered around a heated table called a kosi, pronounced korsi. In medieval Afghanistan, people used a heated table called a sandali, pronounced sandali. In rural Spain, families clustered around a heated table called a brasero, pronounced brasefro. 4 civilizations, separated by thousands of miles, different languages, different religions, different climates, yet they all independently invented exactly the same heating solution. This is not coincidence. This is evolutionary pressure forcing humans toward the optimal answer. The design was nearly identical across cultures. A low table placed over a heat source, typically hot coals or charcoal in a brazier. A thick blanket or quilt draped over the table and extending to the floor, trapping heat underneath. Family members sat around the table with their legs under the blanket. This kept their lower bodies warm while the room remained cool. The Japanese kotatsu evolved from the 14th century Aurori hearth. Families placed a wooden frame over the sunken cooking fire. They covered it with a quilt and created a portable heat source. By the Taisho period in the 1920s, electric heating elements replaced charcoal. But the principle stayed constant. Today, 81% of Japanese households own a kotatsu. The Iranian korsi followed identical logic. A 50-centimeter high table, charcoal brazier underneath, thick lahaf cloth overhanging the sides. Families gathered around the korsi during Yalda celebrations, the winter solstice gathering. The heat not only warmed bodies but became a social magnet, drawing people together. The Afghan sandali was built the same way. Low table, mankal charcoal brazier, large quilt covering legs and lower bodies. The Spanish brasero used a mesa camellia, table with blanket, over hot coals. The Dutch had foot stoves in the 17th century, visible in countless paintings by Vermeer and other masters. When multiple civilizations independently create identical solutions, we must ask why. The answer is elegant. They all discovered zone heating, the principle of heating people rather than entire rooms. Modern forced air systems waste enormous energy heating empty spaces. We heat unused bedrooms. We heat hallways. We heat rooms nobody occupies. This is thermal insanity. The kotatsu, korsi, sandali, and brasero solved this by creating a microclimate around people. They delivered warmth exactly where needed and nowhere else. The efficiency gains were substantial. A small charcoal load lasting 8 to 12 hours could keep 4 to 6 people comfortable. Compare this to heating a 300 square meter home to 20 degrees Celsius. The energy required drops by factors of 10 or more. The social impact mirrored the Chinese canquilling. These heated tables became gathering points. Families ate together. They worked together. They socialized together around the warmth. The brasero was called the keeper of Spanish families together because it physically drew people into a shared space. Heat became the glue of social cohesion. Today, we call this zone heating and market it as innovative smart home technology. Programmable thermostats let us heat only occupied rooms. We act as if this is a breakthrough, yet Japanese, Iranian, Afghan and Spanish families practiced superior zone heating for centuries. They used nothing but a table, blanket and hot coals. When four unconnected cultures independently invent the same solution, it suggests they discovered something fundamental, not cultural quirk, universal truth. Why we abandoned genius? If these ancient systems were so brilliant, so efficient, and so effective, why did we abandon them? The answer reveals an uncomfortable truth about modern progress. The first reason was labor. Roman hypocausts needed slaves feeding furnaces constantly. Russian pechkas required skilled masons to build and maintain the complex internal channels. Korean ondols demanded attention to fire management. Even the simple Spanish brasero needed someone to prepare charcoal, manage embers, and monitor for carbon monoxide. In a world where human labor was cheap and abundant, this was acceptable. But as societies developed and labor became expensive, dedicating people full-time to heating became economically untenable. An oil furnace that runs unattended for weeks suddenly looks far more attractive than a system requiring daily tending. The second reason was safety. Carbon monoxide poisoning killed people regularly with these systems. The Spanish brasero was notorious for deaths in poorly ventilated rooms. Incomplete combustion produced odorless, colorless gas that put families to sleep permanently. House fires were common. The Chinese Kang, with fire channels running under where people slept, sparked countless blazes. Medieval cities battled fires constantly that originated from heating systems. When most buildings were wood construction, one heating accident could destroy entire districts. Modern building codes developed partly in response to these dangers. The third reason was the Industrial Revolution. Suddenly, coal provided cheap fuel that burned hotter and longer than wood, then oil, then natural gas, then electricity. These new energy sources made different system designs possible. Why build a 2-ton brick stove when you can install a compact furnace? The convenience was intoxicating. Flip a switch, adjust a thermostat, receive instant warmth. No fire starting, no fuel preparation, no ash cleaning, no maintenance beyond annual filter changes. For the first time in human history, heating became automatic. But this convenience came with a hidden cost. We traded thermal efficiency for ease of use. Ancient systems achieved 80 to 90% efficiency. Modern forced air furnaces typically achieve 60 to 70%. Much energy is lost in ductwork. We traded resilience for dependence. A Korean family with an ondol was energy independent. As long as they had firewood and maintained their system, they stayed warm no matter what. But once we became dependent on electricity grids, gas pipelines and oil deliveries, we became vulnerable. A power outage that would have been irrelevant to someone with a Roman hypocaust became a life-threatening emergency. We traded comfort quality for speed. Ancient radiant heating created deep bone-warming comfort at lower air temperatures. Modern convective heating blows hot air around, often leaving us feeling warm but not truly comfortable. We compensate by raising thermostat settings, wasting more energy to achieve inferior comfort. Most critically, we traded understanding for convenience. Ancient peoples knew exactly how their heating worked. They understood thermal mass, they understood heat transfer, they understood combustion. Modern homeowners have no idea how their HVAC system functions. When it breaks, they are helpless. We have become dependent on systems we do not comprehend. The Spanish brasero made a brief comeback during Europe's energy crisis in the 2020 era, when electricity prices soared. Suddenly, the old heated table design looked economically attractive again. This pattern repeats throughout history. When energy is cheap, we choose convenience. When energy becomes expensive, we rediscover efficiency. What happens when you heat like ancient cultures did? You discover that warmth can come from massive brick batteries that radiate for 24 hours, from floors that turn your entire home into a gentle radiator, from furniture that serves 5 functions simultaneously, from the earth itself freely giving unlimited heat, from simple tables that gather families together in perfect microclimates of warmth. These were not primitive people, huddling in cold. They were engineers and innovators who understood thermal physics at an intuitive level we have lost. They built systems that were sustainable, resilient, and effective without burning a single watt of electricity. The Russians, Swedes, Koreans, Chinese, Icelanders, Japanese, Iranians, Afghans, and Spanish all arrived at the same conclusions. Thermal mass stores heat better than quick burning. Radiant warmth feels better than blown air. Heating people beats heating empty rooms. Free energy beats purchased energy. Modern technology has given us convenience, speed, and automation, but we lost efficiency, resilience, and understanding. The newest heating system is not always the best. Sometimes the solution lies not in the future, but in 2,000 years of forgotten wisdom. If you found this journey through ancient heating enlightening, subscribe for more deep dives into technologies our ancestors perfected. The past holds more answers than we realize.